Okay, so today let's talk about standard form, or not today per se, let's say in this video, let's talk about standard form. That is to say, for example, if I'm going to use the word 40,000, and I will give it some sort of physics-esque concept, or context, sorry. So that is to say 40,000 meters per second, let's say some sort of magical particle, or non-magical, of course, because it's physics, so it'll be described by the laws of the universe, if that is to say we understand all of them, for which we're pretty sure we don't. But let's say a particle is moving at 40,000 meters per second. And you would say, therefore, that I'd be able to write 40, I'll put a comma in just to aid, 30,000 meters per second. And this per second part I'm going to do by just rising up a little bit and putting to the power -1. That -1 is far too large. In fact, I'm going to go back on that. I'm just going to write 40,000 meters per second is the speed at which something is moving. Now notice that there is a large, or not large, but there is a very obvious repetition of zeros in here. And so if I'm going to be typing in my calculator that concept, or to produce that value, you will see that I will very quickly have to be banging away at that zero 4 times, which perhaps is not the most peaceful thing to do in my world. And also, it is just not something that is utilized in many subjects. So for example, 40,000 meters per second might not be written that way, or it might be said to be there might be said to be better ways to write 40,000 meters per second, for example, in certain problems. So what we want to do is we want to look at this concept of saying 4 times 10 to the power 4. So 4 times 10, and then to this 10 you'd have a 4, and then, oh, that didn't turn out too small. I could have changed the size of that 4. Maybe I should give you that courtesy. 4 times 10 to the power, let's do this, to the power, no, just change the whole thing. This thing is trolling me now. I'm being trolled. Hold up. There we go. So I'm saying 4 times 10. I'm trying to do the same, 40,000. Of course, therefore, I'm going to need to put times 10 to the 4. And my units, of course, like I suggested, let's keep things constant. Meters per second, particle floating through the universe, doing as it pleases, if it were to have some sort of consciousness, for which I'm not sure it does. The idea is that I could write this in my calculator. I could very comfortably click on the 4 here. Then I can do times, and instead I'd do this times, then I'd do 1, 0, and then I'd find the power button. The cumbersome is the phrase that comes to mind. So what I'm going to do instead is consider a way that the calculator allows for this to occur at a much smoother way, something that is much less uncouth. Okay, so let's say we wish to produce 40,000, that's all I'm saying. So I'm going to click that 4, then you use the times 10 to the X button, which I've depicted in this diagram here. There is the times 10 to the X button. And we must state how many zeros we require in this situation. And what we do, like I said in this situation we require 4, so I'm just going to write another 4 here. What we'll end up with then is we'll end up with the 40,000. If I press enter, we'll end up with the 40,000 come up as a result. So what I will illustrate to you, hopefully this comes up. There we are. I do apologize about the screen for this. It is very much not as clear as I assumed it would be, or as it looked at the time. I judged there was some sort of issue in transferring it, so that's my apologies going forward, but I think it gets the point. And I've stated here, you should see the following on your calculator, although a little clearer. I was aware when I did this. The display should say 4x10 4. That is what is unusual for some people, because that does not imply 4 times 10 to the power 4. It would just say 4x10 4. As you can hopefully see in there. And if you can't do, just trust me on that one. It does say 4x10 4, which may look unusual, yet it will represent what we want, which is 40,000. And so if you want to do standard form and to represent certain values like 4 times 10 to the 4 meters per second or anything like that, and you don't want to have to be bashing away at the 0 button, let's say this goes to the power 6, there's 2 things. You don't have to keep writing the 6 zeros, and you don't have to write 4 times 10 to the power 6. You can simply press this lovely button here, as I've depicted there. You can press this lovely button there, and then next to it, right next to it, pick the number of zeros. For this situation, I only needed to pick the number of zeros that were 4 to produce 40,000, and that's just a basic introduction to standard form.